versus mourning process is difficult for in-laws because they're afraid that if you marry again or you partner up again, you were ending the tie that you had with them. Sorry, that's my child. He's very loud. The tie that you had, I warned him away. The tie that you have with that person ends your connection with them. That happened in my family, unfortunately, when, and my aunt, unfortunately, is no longer with us, so she's not here to be offended by it. When my mother, who was widowed, started dating again, my aunt took it very personally because she felt she and my mother had been family for 50 years and they have their own relationship. And she felt if my mother's mourning period in that way had ended and she was now seeing someone else, then that automatically meant that her connection to my aunt was no longer valid because would they either be sisters-in-law anymore? And the answer is, of course you are. Of course you are, unless you don't like those people and you take this as an opportunity not to be with them, which is a whole nother different thing. And that's true too, because you don't have to be connected to people that are not helpful to you. But if you love people, they have to learn that your relationship is different than your mourning for your partner, and that you're moving forward doesn't mean in any way, because it's not just dating. I also have in here moving. Moving is a big thing for people. Anything that you change, if you change things in your house, if you start to give away some of your departed loved ones' belongings, or if you take your ring off. When I moved my ring, my wedding band is still here, but it's on my right hand rather than my left hand, and my engagement ring. And I used to wear Scott's wedding band on my thumb. And I took that off after about 2 years because I needed it before I rubbed it. It was a talisman. It was a mourning thing for me. It was part of my grief. And then I didn't need to anymore. And I had started to date and I didn't need to wear my husband's ring on my thumb anymore. So I took it off. And one of his cousins noticed and said, "You don't wear this ring anymore." And I said, "No, I don't." And they were okay with it. And it would have been okay if they weren't okay with it, because once again, as I said in the beginning, your timeline is your own. No one makes a timeline for you but you. But those things will be as outward symbols of mourning, wearing the accoutrements and symbols of your previous relationship. Those things will be noticed by people, and you have to feel confident enough in your own timeline inside you, your internal timeline, to be able to say, I need it not to wear this anymore. I needed to move it to a place that was still prominent, but was not significant in the way that says that I am married still actively. Even if you will always be married here, you'll always be married here. You're not always going to be married here. And that's okay. And maybe you are. And that's okay. That's you. That is yours. But I feel differently about it. So I moved it here. And that's okay. I started probably a week or so after Scott died. There were things that made me feel, I had so much stuff. He was a clothes horse. So we had 3 bedrooms, and all of the guest room, all of our son's rooms, closets, and then 3/3 of the closet in our room, which was huge, was all his stuff. And he often would stare at the third of a closet I have and go, "Leslie, what are we going to do with your clothes?" I mean, that's how much stuff we had. So my mother moved in, and I needed to get rid of some stuff. So I started giving things away to organizations like migrant organizations. I'm in South Florida, so there's a lot of immigrants here, migrant workers, to build a family, to homeless people who needed really good dress stuff to go to interviews in, that kind of thing. And half of the people I knew were like, "What an amazing tribute you're giving to his memory." And some people are, "You're giving his stuff away so soon." I focused on the people that were positive. Someone said, "A fellow widow told me, now you're a member of the Go Club, where people ask you to go out. You may not like it, but at least you keep busy. If you don't, they will stop asking." That's a really great question. Has that happened to anyone where you feel like if you don't answer people's invitations, they will stop giving them to you? And some people are going to. Some people are going to say, "Well, it got too weird and she said no, or he said no, and then I stopped asking." Your friends, your true friends in your tribe that are in your heart, they will always be. And those people will probably take a break from asking, you know, a little earlier, because they'll know. And those people like my friend Libby, who know when you need to go out, will just show up at your house with an Uber and tell you to get into it. And that's great too. Is everyone seeing the comments? Everyone's able to see the chat so they can see that in things that are targeted towards other people. Now, there, of course, are moments where your grief, it's not a timeline thing, but it's an intensity thing that becomes unhelpful to you. There's a complicated grief. It's condition, and I took this from Psychology Today. It is not my own. Condition describes a heightened state of grief. Sufferers who are still stuck experiencing long bouts of intensely painful emotions, weeks, months, or even years after their initial loss. Those things will manifest themselves in things like not being able to get out of bed, literally not being able to function, to brush your teeth, to clean yourself, to parent your child, to go to work. Those things are acute and need to be addressed therapeutically. They need to be addressed in a way that it helps you, even if you're still mourning and still grieving and still very sad, that at least makes you able to function. Other things are, as we discussed this morning in the thing this morning, the alcohol, perhaps the inappropriate sexuality, although I think that, you know, sexuality is awesome. But if you're acting in ways that are unsafe, whether it's sex or drinking or drugs or gambling or spending, or ways that you can see or other people can see are harmful to you, those are things that need to be addressed. They are not the same as dating or moving your ring or giving away stuff or other things that people are onto. So I don't want to gloss over things and say everything you're doing is always awesome, because we have ways. In my book, I talk about a period that I call the grief cake period, where I talk about that I gained a lot of weight. I needed to eat that stuff. It was fine, but I drank a lot, I ate a lot. I said I ate everything nailed down, and then I ate around the nails, you know, then kind of licked the crumbs off the nails. I got to a point where I knew that I could not function that way without stopping. Fortunately, it had not gotten to a acute point where I could stop without needing help. If you need help, please seek help. Help is available to you. We got about 10 minutes left. I'm going to go to the questions and situations of that. Does anyone have anything they have to say or any questions? I know all of you are muted right now, so you can't necessarily hear each other, but if any of you have anything to add, I just wanted to tell you, while I have you here, that I know this is not the ideal way to do this, and that all of us have planned to be there in Tampa where we could hug each other, love each other, go get some ceviche, walk up to Columbia, you know, do the 5K in the morning, you know, and sit there, do the pirate thing was going to happen tonight. That's always fun. And we were going to be able to dance, and whether or not we can dance at all, we were going to be out there and honor not only our loved ones, but honor ourselves and our resilience, because we're here. Because if you made the decision to spend money to travel to Tampa, Florida, no matter where you were coming from, to be with other people, you made a step. That is huge. And I don't know if people who are not in our community understand what a huge ass deal that is, to get out of your house and say, I'm going to spend a weekend. And I felt that way the first weekend that I went, where I was like, and I presented, so I knew I was going to have to be there. But I was like, I don't know any of these people. I don't know if I'm going to like anyone, if they're going to relate to me. As I said before, widows are not a monolith, so they're coming from different traditions. Am I going to like anyone? I've made some really great friends. And it's been very important to me. And I know for those of you, particularly those of you for whom this was the first time, I'm so sad that you're not going to be able to do this, but I'm hugging you from here. I'm hugging you from here. Everyone who's here in this room is hugging you and loving you and wanting you to know that you are not alone. And I'm glad that you're connecting. And I hope that some people in these chat rooms and stuff will DM each other later and be able to get information from each other, just to hold on to each other, because we go through a thing. No one, like I said, no one wants to be in this club. It's a line from the Breakfast Club. It's social, pathetic and sad, but social, you know? That's where we are. We may be sad, but we are not pathetic, and we're certainly here for each other. Someone said, I would not do the 5K. I wouldn't run even if someone were chasing me. Valid. Absolutely valid. I wanted to be with people who were like me right now. I know. And this isolation thing is so stupid and so weird because we're all isolated from each other. And those of us in this community, particularly those who chose to come to Camp Widow, chose not to isolate from each other, and we have to anyway. So making this virtual and making this available even in this way, I think is so important. Mary says, my anger's been so out of control lately. And I'm wondering if I wish I could talk to you about this. I'm wondering if that is related to the coronavirus situation, or if that's a state that was present even before this, or if it's just something that we're cycling through. This morning, we talked about how the stages, the Kubler-Ross stages of grief, were not meant to apply to grief, loss of, death or widowhood or anything at all. They were about acceptance of having a disease, a fatal disease, and that they were never meant to be followed step by step by step. So anger is incredibly normal. Incredibly normal. Anger is something that will happen. Anger at your loved one, maybe for some reason. Anger at life, at a higher power, if that's what you believe in, if that's your process. Anger at people who won't get out of your face. This happens. And all I have to say is that my therapist encouraged me to feed into my anger and to acknowledge and honor my anger, and to see how I could use that anger to move forward in that, and what is on the other side of it. So once again, if it becomes a thing that is all encompassing that you cannot deal with, I would get help. But if it's just your anger, you're noticing it because you think that you're supposed to be over it by now, you're not supposed to be over anything. You're not supposed to be, there's no supposed to be in this. There is no template for this. You have to find your own. And I think a little bit of anger in any situation is honestly really good, because it kind of keeps you moving. Sandra says, my anger comes and goes. I think that's super normal. Rona says, a widow friend is very angry also, been a little over a year like me. Once again, and I don't know if your loss was expected. I don't know if your loss was sudden like mine was. My husband died in the middle of the night of a heart attack like that. We were making out, literally. So at least I know we weren't fighting at the time. You can laugh. It's a little funny. It just happened, and I was married and literally making out one moment, and then one moment my husband was dead. And I had anger at everything and everybody, and myself. Should I have done anything? What could I have done? Could I have stopped it? Could I have stopped him from ordering really greasy Greek food the day before? What did I do? Was this my fault? And anger, I think, at ourselves makes us feel that we're in control, because when we're widowed, control is something we have so little of, because we couldn't control this huge event. So we try to control other aspects of our lives. And I think it's fair to say to yourself, you can give yourself a break, really. Faye says, hugs to all. This would have been my 6th Camp Widow. It's amazing, transformative experience. Do not lose hope. Thank you. We're all connected. In my first year, I could not see a path to the light. Today, I'm standing in light again. Bless you, Faye. I continue to move on. Good for you. Is it normal to be angry at 5 years now? It's passing year 5 and you're into year 6. I'm feeling all the emotions again. Anyone else? Once again, I think we're in an extreme place right now in the society where we're in an unprecedented, unless you lived through the Depression and through World War II, and maybe some of you did, but I think for me in my 40s, this is unprecedented territory. And we are in a place where, as Americans, those middle class of us, or working class people have Wi-Fi, have extreme comfort. And we're now cast out of it, and it's difficult. And if you're trying to grieve through that, it's really difficult. Once again, check in with yourself, check in with your innerness. Is that a word, innerness? Check in with your spiritual advisor, or your therapist, or your counselor, whoever it is that you go to. Right now is such a triggering time. You know it. It is so triggering. I watch a lot of like doctor shows and stuff. And most of these things were filmed like 6 months to a year ago, but every doctor show, like Chicago Med or Grey's Anatomy, they all have epidemic shows this year. And I don't know why that is. It's like, oh, it's a contagion. It's like, you're evil and you suck. You can of course just turn it off, but there's so many triggers right now. And because we are grieving the world as it was 2 weeks ago, and it might not ever be that way again, certainly isn't right now. I think it's a sure trigger to our own grief and the grief that we are mourning today by being here. So and honoring, I think honoring that grief and that mourning and that life that we lost by being here. So I think it's normal right now to feel triggered. Yeah, thank you, Pamela. I appreciate that. Cheryl says my husband's 53rd birthday was the 19th. I really needed camp this year. I know my 10th anniversary was February 28th. And I had a weird experience. We got about 2 minutes. I'll say when my book came out March 10th, and they had an event at the Colony Hotel with James Patterson, who's been the writer, who's been a mentor of mine. And we had this big event where we interviewed each other, and it was literally in the same hotel we got married. The weekend that would have been our 10th anniversary weekend, where I could look out from the ballroom where it was, out onto the lawn where we got married, and onto the patio where we had a reception. And it's been tears, and it was a little bittersweet because we were supposed to be celebrating together. But it was still a celebration of him, and I was able to take that very triggering thing. When they asked me to do it, they gave me that date, and I went, okay, I guess. And it turned out to be a really beautiful celebration, and I appreciate it. Beth, today is 9 months for her, and I know anniversaries are so hard, and this day every month is going to continue to be hard for you, maybe for the rest of your life. It won't be as hard, hopefully, as you move forward, but it is today, and it's okay to feel that way. I wish I was there for you. I wish all of us were there to talk you through this, and perhaps dude, okay, sorry, and have a fine beverage. We have about a minute before we wrap up. Does anyone, 4 months, oh my gosh, Sandra, I'm so sorry. Month has been horrible. Rachel says we met on March 8th. His birthday was March 9th. Our wedding anniversary was March 13th. Now this pandemic, when we live through this, you have my permission to stay home in March. Go to your bosses and say, my vacation is in March. Screw March. March is dead to me. I get it. It's awful. It's always going to be. Pamela says, reminder, we have Camp Widow in Toronto in November, and I'm hoping there'll be some semblance of normalcy by then. Many of our regional groups are considering having these types of virtual meetings. That is amazing to stay connected. So we will feel that way. You will feel that way. And I encourage you to find out as quickly as possible if and when those things happen so that we can get together. It is 4:45. This has been such a blessing. Such a blessing. I hope that this has been a blessing and not triggering in any way to you. I love you all. I will always need this community and need you all. I thank you, Nicole, for being here again. Nicole, let me give hands to Nicole, who is our technical advisor. This is, I think, her third today. She also recorded, there will be a recorded version of this with not so many cuss words that we did earlier this week. So this will live someplace on the Soaring Spirits website, I assume. Yes. So if you need to go back and say, what did that crazy girl say? You can go back and find that. Thank you guys so much for being here. I encourage you to check in for the rest of the weekend as well. And if you need anything again from me, if you need anything, Eastern Seaboard, LeslieGraceTreater@gmail.com. Please let me know. Thank you all. Have a really good rest of your weekend.